The San Diego sun blazed down on Naval Base Coronado as Lieutenant Commander Jack Razor Reynolds finished his morning training session. At 32, he was in the prime of his career, a decorated Navy SEAL with 3 tours in Afghanistan and a chest full of medals he rarely talked about. His team had just completed a grueling beach run, and the younger SEALs were catching their breath, trying not to show how winded they were. Razor checked that out. His swim buddy, Petty Officer Mike Torres, nudged him and pointed toward the parking lot. An old, dust-covered Jeep Cherokee had just pulled up. It had seen better days, rust spots on the bumper, a cracked windshield, and what looked like at least 15 years of hard driving. The woman who stepped out looked equally weathered. She appeared to be in her late 40s, wearing faded jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and beat-up hiking boots. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, streaked with premature gray. "Lost tourist," suggested another SEAL, Tommy Chen. "Probably," Reynolds laughed. "Happens all the time. Civilians think they can just drive onto a naval base for sightseeing." The woman walked toward them with a slight limp, favoring her left leg. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone dealing with old injuries. As she got closer, Reynolds noticed her eyes green, alert, constantly scanning her surroundings. It was subtle, but something about it seemed familiar. "Excuse me, ma'am," Reynolds called out, jogging over with his trademark confident smile. "This is a restricted area. The visitor center is back at the main gate." The woman stopped, studied him for a moment. "I'm aware of where I am." Her voice was quiet, raspy, like she'd spent too much time yelling or breathing in smoke. Or both. "Then you know you can't be here," Torres added, joining them. The rest of the SEAL team gathered around, curious about the interruption to their morning routine. "I have business here," she said simply. Reynolds laughed, not unkindly but with the casual confidence of someone who was used to being in charge. "Ma'am, unless you're military personnel or have specific authorization, you need to leave. Security will be here soon anyway." The woman reached into her pocket, and several SEALs tensed instinctively. She pulled out an old, worn military ID card and held it up. "I am military personnel," she said. Reynolds took the ID, examined it. The photo was old, showing a much younger version of the woman before him. The name read Rebecca Stone. The rank insignia was too faded to make out clearly. "This ID expired 8 years ago," Reynolds said, handing it back. "Look, I appreciate your service, but you still can't just walk onto an active training area." Chen leaned in, squinting at the ID. "What was your rank anyway? Can't quite make it out on that old thing." The woman, Rebecca, was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter?" "Just curious," Reynolds said, still laughing. "What were you, supply, admin, motor pool?" He was trying to be friendly, but his tone carried that slight condescension that elite warriors sometimes had toward support personnel. "Something like that," Rebecca said quietly. Torres chuckled. "Come on, you can tell us, we won't judge. My mom was a yeoman in the Navy back in the day, nothing wrong with support roles." "Yeah," Reynolds added, his laugh growing. "So what was it? Petty officer. Maybe made it to chief before you got out." He was genuinely trying to be nice, but his assumption that she must have been enlisted and in a non-combat role was obvious. Rebecca looked at each of them in turn. These young warriors, so confident, so sure of their place at the top of the military hierarchy. They had no idea who stood before them. "You really want to know my rank?" she asked. "Sure," Reynolds said, still grinning. "Can't be that embarrassing. Everyone serves in their own way, right?" Before Rebecca could answer, the sound of vehicles approaching made everyone turn. 4 black SUVs with flags on the front were speeding toward them, kicking up dust. This wasn't unusual. Brass visited the SEALs regularly. What was unusual was the speed and urgency of their approach. The vehicles screeched to a halt. The doors opened simultaneously and 4 figures emerged. Reynolds recognized them immediately and his blood ran cold. General James Hawthorne, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. General Patricia Williams, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations. General Robert Chang, commander of Joint Special Operations Command. And General Marcus Anderson, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officer in the entire United States Armed Forces. "Ten Hut," Reynolds barked, and every SEAL snapped to attention. But the generals weren't looking at them. Their eyes were fixed on Rebecca Stone. And then, in a moment that would be burned into Reynolds' memory forever, all four of the most powerful military officers in America raised their hands in perfect, crisp salutes. Not to the SEALs, to the worn, limping woman in civilian clothes. "General Stone," General Anderson said, his voice carrying absolute respect. "Ma'am, we're here as requested." Rebecca returned the salute slowly, precisely. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming." Reynolds felt his knees go weak. "General," his mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. He'd just been laughing at her, asking if she'd been motor pool, suggesting she was a chief at best. General Williams stepped forward. "Ma'am, is this the team you mentioned in your report?" Rebecca nodded. "It is." General Chang's eyes were hard as granite as he looked at Reynolds and his team, the ones who have been refusing to train female candidates. "Among other things," Rebecca said quietly. Reynolds found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "General Stone, you're a general." Rebecca turned to him, and for the first time he saw the weight she carried in those green eyes. The weight of command, the weight of secrets, the weight of sacrifice. "Lieutenant General Rebecca Stone," she said. "Retired, former commander of the Intelligence Support Activity, the Ghost Unit." The Ghost Unit. Reynolds felt his stomach drop. Every special operator knew that name, the most classified unit in the military. The ones who went where even SEALs couldn't go. The ones who didn't exist on paper. The ones who did the impossible. Torres actually staggered. The Rebecca Stone, Operation Nightfall, the Tehran extraction, the Moscow papers. She nodded once. Chen's face had gone pale. But you're a woman," Rebecca finished. "Yes, that seems to be a problem for your team." General Anderson stepped forward, his presence commanding absolute attention. 3 weeks ago, General Stone contacted me about disturbing reports from this base. Female candidates for special operations being systematically failed. Training accidents that only seemed to happen to women. Evaluation scores that didn't match performance videos. He paused, his eyes boring into Reynolds. "General Stone volunteered to come here, undercover, to investigate, to see for herself how deeply this problem runs." Rebecca pulled out a small recorder from her pocket. "Every word you've said has been recorded, Lieutenant Commander. Every assumption, every dismissive laugh." Reynolds wanted to disappear into the sand beneath his feet. This woman, who he'd assumed was lost, who he'd condescendingly asked about her rank while laughing, was a legend, a ghost, a warrior whose classified operations had saved countless American lives. "General Stone," he started, "I'm sorry I didn't know." "That's exactly the point," she interrupted. "You didn't know, so you assumed. You assumed I was nobody important. You assumed I was support personnel at best. You assumed I didn't belong here, just like you assume every female candidate doesn't belong in special operations." Age. The silence on the beach was deafening. Even the ocean waves seemed to quiet as the full weight of the situation settled on Reynolds and his team. 12 of America's elite warriors stood at attention, facing a woman they dismissed as a lost civilian just minutes before. General Anderson broke the silence. "At ease, everyone. General Stone, would you like to conduct this meeting here or in the conference room?" Rebecca looked at the SEALs, then at the training ground behind them. "Here is fine, Marcus. These men should hear this where they do their training, where they've been failing female candidates for the past 18 months. General Williams pulled out a tablet, swiping through files. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, according to these records, your team has evaluated 23 female candidates for special operations in the last year and a half. How many passed? Reynolds' throat was dry. 2, ma'am. 2 out of 23. That's less than 9%. The male pass rate for the same period. Approximately 60%, ma'am. General Chang stepped forward. Interesting disparity, wouldn't you say? Tours tried to defend their record. The standards are incredibly high, sir. Not everyone can. Can what, Petty Officer Tours? Rebecca interrupted. Can do what I did for 25 years. Can complete missions that your instructors use as training examples. Can survive what I survived. She walked closer to the group, her limp more pronounced now. Reynolds noticed she was sweating, clearly in pain, but her voice never wavered. Let me tell you about one of those female candidates you failed, Rebecca said. Captain Sarah Walsh, Olympic swimmer, marathon runner, expert marksman, spoke 4 languages. She failed your swim qualification because, according to your report, she lacked the upper body strength for combat swimming. Rebecca pulled out her phone, showed them a video. It was Walsh, swimming powerfully through rough waters, easily keeping pace with male candidates. This is from her second attempt, which you didn't allow. She was requesting to try again when you told her, and I quote from the recording, maybe you should consider intelligence work, less physical. Reynolds remembered that day, remembered dismissing Walsh, thinking he was doing her a favor. She's now working a desk job at the Pentagon, Rebecca continued. We lost a potential operator because you decided she didn't look the part. General Anderson added, Captain Walsh's uncle is Senator Walsh from Virginia. He's very interested in these findings. The blood drained from Reynolds' face. Political attention was the last thing any special operations unit wanted. Rebecca continued walking among them, studying each SEAL. You want to know about my rank, about my service? Fine, I'll tell you. I was the first woman to complete SEAL training in 1993 before it was officially allowed. I did it under a male identity, binding my chest, cutting my hair, taking hormones to deepen my voice. The SEALs exchanged shocked glances. For 6 months I was Kevin Stone. I graduated 5th in my class. The day after graduation, I revealed my true identity. The Navy wanted to court-martial me for fraud. Instead, the CIA recruited me. They saw value where the Navy saw a problem. She stopped in front of Reynolds. I spent the next 25 years doing jobs no one else could do. A woman could get close to targets in ways men couldn't. I could be invisible in cultures where women were ignored. I extracted 17 high-value targets from Iran by posing as a humanitarian worker. I stopped 3 terrorist attacks by infiltrating groups that used women as cover. Her voice grew harder. I earned every rank through operations so classified most don't have names. I've been shot 11 times, stabbed 4 times, and tortured in ways that would break most people. This limp, it's from jumping out of a burning helicopter in Somalia to save a SEAL team that had been ambushed. Your instructors at Bud S tell that story. They just leave out the part where the hero was a woman. Chen couldn't help himself. That was you, the ghost of Mogadishu. Rebecca nodded. We study that operation, Tours said weakly. It's taught as the gold standard of combat rescue. And yet you don't think women belong in special operations, Rebecca said, even though a woman performed the operation you study. General Williams cleared her throat. General Stone has been awarded 3 medals of honor, all classified. She has more combat experience than anyone on this base, and she came here voluntarily, enduring your disrespect and mockery, to investigate these allegations. Show them the file, Patricia, Rebecca said quietly. General Williams pulled up another document. This is the real reason we're here. 3 female candidates who were failed from this program have died in the past year. Reynolds' head snapped up. Died. Suicide, Rebecca said flatly. They killed themselves after being told they weren't good enough, after being humiliated, after having their dreams crushed not by failure but by prejudice. She pulled out 3 photos from her pocket. 3 young women in uniform, smiling, full of hope. Lieutenant Amy Chen, no relation to you, Petty Officer Chen. She scored in the top 5% on every written exam, spoke Mandarin and Arabic fluently, and could have been invaluable in Pacific operations. You failed her for lack of combat mindset after she showed compassion to a fellow candidate who was injured. Rebecca placed the photo on the ground. Petty Officer First Class Maria Gonzalez came from a family of Marines. Her brothers all served with distinction. She wanted to be the first special operator in her family. You failed her for inability to work in a team environment because she reported sexual harassment from one of your assistant instructors. The second photo joined the first. Seaman Janet Brooks, 18 years old, graduated top of her class in basic training, could disassemble and reassemble any weapon blindfolded. You failed her on her first day because, and I quote from your report, lacks the physical presence necessary for special operations. The third photo was placed carefully with the others. They're dead because you decided they didn't belong before they ever had a chance to prove themselves. Reynolds felt sick. He remembered all 3 women, remembered thinking he was doing them a favor by washing them out early before they got hurt trying to do something beyond their capabilities. I didn't know, he said weakly. I didn't know they. Of course you didn't, Rebecca said. You never followed up, never wondered what happened to the dreams you crushed, never considered that maybe, just maybe, you were wrong. General Anderson stepped forward. As of this moment, this training facility is under review. All female candidates who were failed in the last 2 years will be offered the opportunity to return and retry under new, unbiased instruction. General Chang added, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, you and your team are suspended from training duties pending a full investigation. Reynolds' career was crumbling before his eyes. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd achieved, was disappearing because of his assumptions, his prejudice. General Stone, he said desperately, please, we didn't mean. We thought we were maintaining standards. Rebecca looked at him with something that might have been pity. You want to know the ironic part, Reynolds? You're a good operator. Your record in combat is exemplary. You've saved lives, completed impossible missions, but you let your bias blind you to potential in others. She gestured to the photos on the ground. These 3 women could have been your teammates, could have watched your back, could have brought skills and perspectives that might have saved lives. Instead, they're dead, and you're about to lose everything you've built, all because you couldn't see past their gender. General Williams's phone buzzed. She answered it, listened, then looked at Rebecca. Ma'am, they're here. Who's here? Reynolds asked. His answer came in the form of footsteps, dozens of them. Female service members from every branch began arriving on the beach. Sailors, soldiers, Marines, airmen. They formed up in perfect formation behind Rebecca. These, Rebecca said, are all the women who were failed from special operations programs in the last 5 years. The ones who are still alive. They've all gone on to serve with distinction in other roles, but they never got the chance to reach their full potential. Reynolds recognized some faces, women he'd evaluated and dismissed. One stepped forward. It was Captain Walsh, the swimmer he'd failed. General Stone asked us if we wanted to say anything to you, Walsh said to Reynolds. Most of us declined. We've moved on, but I want you to know something. Last month I used the combat swimming techniques I learned here, the ones you said I couldn't master, to save 3 sailors when their ship went down in the Pacific. I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't my job, but I was the only one who could swim in those conditions. She paused. Those sailors are alive because of skills you said I didn't have. The beach at Coronado had become a courtroom under the open sky. Reynolds and his team stood frozen as more women arrived, each carrying a story of dreams deferred and potential dismissed. The four generals watched with stern faces as Rebecca Stone orchestrated what was becoming a moment of reckoning. "General Stone," Reynolds finally managed, his voice hoarse, "may I speak?" Rebecca nodded. "Go ahead, Lieutenant Commander, but choose your words carefully. Everything is being recorded for the congressional hearing next week." Reynolds felt his stomach drop further. "Congressional hearing." General Anderson responded, "Did you think this would stay internal? 3 suicides linked to discrimination in Special Forces training. Senator Walsh has already called for a full investigation. The president is watching this personally." The weight of it all, the ruined careers, the lost lives, the national attention, crashed down on Reynolds. He'd thought he was maintaining standards. He'd thought he was protecting the integrity of the SEALs. He'd thought. "I was wrong," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out. "I was completely, utterly wrong." His team looked at him in shock. Torres grabbed his arm. "Razor, what are you doing?" Reynolds shook him off. "No, Mike, we need to own this." He turned to Rebecca. "General Stone, we operated from a place of bias. I see that now. We looked at these candidates and saw what we expected to see, not what was actually there." He pointed to the photos on the ground. "I remember Janet Brooks. First day, she was 5'2", maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. I took one look at her and decided she'd never make it through Hell Week. So I made her first day impossible, set her up to fail because I thought I was saving her from worse failure later." His voice cracked slightly. "I never gave her the chance to prove me wrong." Rebecca studied him for a long moment. "And what about Maria Gonzalez?" Reynolds closed his eyes, remembering. "She reported Instructor Peters for making inappropriate comments, said he offered to give her special training after hours. I thought she was being too sensitive, that she couldn't handle military banter." "Where is Instructor Peters now?" General Williams asked. "Discharged 6 months ago," Reynolds admitted, "for sexual assault on a civilian." The silence was damning. Chen suddenly spoke up, surprising everyone. "General Stone, I need to confess something. My sister wanted to join the military, wanted to be a SEAL like me. I talked her out of it. Told her it wasn't for women. She's a doctor now, but she still trains, still runs marathons, still shoots at the range. She would have been incredible." He looked at the photos on the ground. "Amy Chen wasn't my relative, but she could have been my sister, and I failed her because I couldn't see past my own prejudice." Rebecca walked over to him. Despite her obvious pain, she moved with the controlled grace of a warrior. "At least you can see it now. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Chen could answer, a helicopter approached from the ocean. A Black Hawk, unmarked, the kind used for special operations. It landed smoothly on the beach and the side door slid open. A young woman in tactical gear stepped out. She was tall, athletic, with sergeant stripes on her uniform. Behind her, 3 more women emerged, all geared up for combat operations. "General Stone," the sergeant said, saluting crisply. "Strike Team 7 reporting as ordered." Reynolds stared in confusion. "Strike Team 7, I've never heard of." "Because it's classified," Rebecca said. "This is the all-female Special Operations Unit I've been training in Nevada for the past 2 years. They've completed 6 missions in hostile territory. Their success rate is 100%. General Chang stepped forward. "Show them the footage, Sergeant Kumar." Kumar pulled out a tablet, connected it to a portable screen. The video that played was from a helmet cam, showing a night operation in what looked like Syria. The team moved through an urban environment with lethal efficiency, clearing rooms, neutralizing threats, extracting a target. "This was 3 weeks ago," Kumar explained. "We extracted a CIA asset from a compound that 3 male teams had deemed too dangerous to attempt. We got in and out in 17 minutes. 0 casualties. Tors watched in awe. That room-clearing technique at 3:47, that's brilliant. Using the corner shadow to mask movement while the second operator provides cross-angle coverage, Kumar finished. We developed it specifically for operators with smaller frames who can use concealment that larger operators can't. Another woman from the team spoke up. I'm Sergeant First Class Diana Reeves, former Olympic gymnast. Failed out of your program 2 years ago, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. You said I was too focused on precision over power. She gestured to the screen. That precision is what allowed me to navigate the roof entry without triggering the pressure sensors. A heavier operator would have set them off. Reynolds felt his entire worldview crumbling. Everything he'd believed about combat, about what made a warrior, was being challenged by undeniable evidence. Rebecca turned to address everyone present. For the past 18 months, while you've been failing female candidates here, I've been training the ones you rejected. We've created something new. Something that uses different strengths, different approaches, different tactics. She pulled up statistics on the screen. Smaller operators can move through tighter spaces. They require less food and water on extended operations. They can blend into civilian populations more easily. They often have better flexibility and endurance-to-weight ratios. These aren't weaknesses, they're advantages we've been ignoring. General Anderson added, the Pentagon has been watching Strike Team 7's success with great interest. We're planning to expand the program, but we need training facilities that will support, not sabotage, female operators. Reynolds looked at his team, saw the shame and recognition in their eyes. They'd been wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. What happens to us now? He asked quietly. Rebecca limped over to him, looked him in the eye. That depends on you. General Anderson wants to court-martial the lot of you. Make examples to prevent this from happening again. Reynolds swallowed hard. But, Rebecca continued, I've proposed an alternative. You can face charges, lose your careers, and become footnotes in a scandal, or you can become part of the solution. What do you mean? You're going to retrain, from the beginning, and your instructors will be Strike Team 7. You're going to learn what it's like to be judged by different standards, to have your strengths dismissed and your weaknesses magnified. You're going to experience what these women experienced. Tors looked incredulous. You want us to be trained by the women you failed, Rebecca finished. Yes, because they succeeded despite you. They found ways to excel that you never imagined. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something that makes you better operators. Kumar stepped forward. The training will be brutal. We'll use every technique you used against female candidates, every impossible standard, every biased evaluation. You'll understand what it feels like to be set up to fail. Reynolds looked at his team, then at the photos on the ground, then at Rebecca. The choice was clear. Court-martial meant the end of everything. This alternative meant humiliation, but also education, maybe redemption. I'll do it, he said. I'll submit to the retraining. One by one, his team agreed. They had no real choice, but Reynolds saw something in their eyes. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the beginning of understanding. Rebecca nodded. The program starts tomorrow, 0500 hours. You'll be the first male class to go through Project Valkyrie. Project Valkyrie. The future of special operations, General Williams said. Integrated teams using diverse strengths. The enemy doesn't care about gender, neither should we. As the generals prepared to leave, Rebecca called out to Reynolds one more time. Lieutenant Commander, you asked about my rank, laughing like it was a joke. Do you understand now why that laughter was so insulting? Reynolds nodded, unable to speak. Every time you laughed at a female candidate, every time you dismissed their potential, you were laughing at decades of service, sacrifice, and success you knew nothing about. Remember that tomorrow when Sergeant Kumar is evaluating you. 0500 hours came quickly. Reynolds and his 11-man SEAL team stood in formation on the same beach where their world had shifted the day before. They wore basic PT gear, no insignia, no indication of their elite status. For the first time in years, they were students, not instructors. Sergeant Kumar stood before them, flanked by her Strike Team 7. In the dim pre-dawn light, the women looked like shadows, but shadows that moved with deadly purpose. "Gentlemen," Kumar began, her voice carrying despite the ocean wind, "welcome to Project Valkyrie. For the next 6 weeks, you will experience training from a different perspective. The perspective of those you failed." She pulled out a clipboard. "First, we'll do basic evaluations." Reynolds stepped forward. Reynolds stepped out of formation. Kumar walked around him slowly, making notes. 6'2", approximately 220 pounds. That's a liability. Reynolds blinked. "Excuse me, Sergeant." "Your size, Lieutenant Commander. In the operations we run, you'd be too large for optimal infiltration, too heavy for certain rope work. You consume more resources, take up more space in vehicles, create a bigger signature for thermal imaging." She made more notes. "Can you fit through a ventilation shaft that's 18 inches in diameter?" No buts, Sergeant Reeves, show him." Diana Reeves, the former Olympic gymnast, moved to a training obstacle that had been set up overnight. It was a mock ventilation system. She slipped through it like water, emerging on the other side in seconds. "In our last operation," Kumar continued, "that skill allowed us to bypass 3 security checkpoints. You would have had to fight through them, risking the mission and your team." She moved to Tors. "You, 5'10", about 190, better but still problematic. How's your flexibility?" "My flexibility?" Sergeant Patel, demonstrate." Another Strike Team member dropped into a position that looked impossible. Her body folded in ways that made the SEALs wince. "This position allowed me to hide in a storage compartment for 6 hours during surveillance. Could you do that, Petty Officer Tors?" Tors tried to replicate the position and failed miserably. Kumar made more notes. Lack of flexibility, another liability. For the next hour, each SEAL was evaluated not on their traditional strengths, but on the criteria that female operators had been judged by. Their size was a disadvantage. Their muscle mass was excessive. Their inability to blend into civilian populations was highlighted. Chen was told his facial structure was too aggressive for undercover work. Thompson was informed that his caloric needs would compromise long-duration operations. Williams was criticized for his inability to modulate his presence, military speak, for being too intimidating. By the time the sun was fully up, the SEALs were experiencing something entirely foreign, being found wanting before they'd even had a chance to prove themselves. "Now," Kumar announced, "we'll test your actual capabilities, but we'll use scenarios designed for our strengths, not yours." The first test was infiltration. A building had been set up with multiple entry points, but all the obvious ones, doors, windows, were blocked or booby-trapped. The only way in was through unconventional means that required flexibility, small size, or creative thinking. Reynolds' team struggled. They were used to breaching doors, fast roping from helicopters, overwhelming force. This required something different. Meanwhile, Strike Team 7 demonstrated the solution. They used a combination of techniques the SEALs had never seen. One woman climbed inside through a drainage pipe. Another used parkour movements to reach a tiny third-floor window. A third literally bent herself backward to slide under a barrier that seemed impossible to pass. "In Afghanistan," Kumar explained as the SEALs watched in frustration, "we infiltrated a Taliban compound using these methods. No shots fired. No alarms raised. The target never knew we were there until we had him in custody." The next test was endurance, but not the kind the SEALs were used to. Instead of carrying heavy packs over short distances, they had to maintain a moderate pace for hours while staying below a certain heart rate, mimicking the kind of efficiency that smaller bodies naturally achieved. The SEALs, with their larger muscle mass, burned through energy faster. Their heart rates spiked. They struggled to maintain the efficiency that the women demonstrated easily. "This is ridiculous," Tors muttered during a water break. "This isn't real combat training." Kumar overheard him. "Isn't it? Sergeant Brooks, tell him about Pakistan." A quiet woman stepped forward. "3 months ago, we tracked a target for 72 hours on foot through mountains. We had to stay close enough to maintain visual, but couldn't spike our heart rates because the enemy had thermal detection that could pick up excessive body heat. A traditional team would have been detected in the first 6 hours." She looked at Tors. "We completed the mission because we could maintain efficiency your body type can't achieve. Different isn't inferior, petty officer. It's just different." By midday, the psychological effect was setting in. The SEALs were exhausted, frustrated, and demoralized. Every test was designed to highlight their weaknesses while showcasing the women's strengths. It was exactly what they had done to female candidates, just reversed. During lunch, a carefully measured portion that left the larger men still hungry, Rebecca Stone arrived. She moved stiffly, her injuries obviously bothering her, but she surveyed the training with sharp eyes. "How are they doing, Sergeant Kumar?" "About how you'd expect, ma'am. They're learning what it feels like to have the deck stacked against them." Reynolds stood up. "General Stone, with respect, this isn't fair. These tests are designed for people with different body types than yours," Rebecca interrupted. "Different capabilities. Yes, that's the point. For years, you've run training designed for 6-foot-tall, 200-pound men and then wondered why women struggled. You never considered that the problem wasn't them. It was your narrow definition of what a warrior looks like." She walked over to a whiteboard that had been set up on the beach. On it were statistics. "Do you know what the most successful sniper team in Israeli history looks like? 2 women, both under 5'5". Do you know why? Because they could hide in positions men couldn't fit into and maintain those positions for days without the caloric needs of larger operators." She wrote more statistics. "The most successful spy in World War II was a woman with a prosthetic leg. Everyone underestimated her, just like you underestimate every woman who walks onto this base." Rebecca turned to face them fully. "Strike Team 7 has a mission success rate that exceeds any male special operations unit currently active. Not because they're better warriors than you, but because they bring different capabilities to the fight. Capabilities that you've been too arrogant to recognize." Chen raised his hand. "Ma'am, I'm starting to understand, but how do we change an entire culture? The military has always adapted," Rebecca cut him off. "We went from horses to helicopters, from swords to smart bombs, but somehow you think integrating women is too radical a change." Kumar added, "The irony is, women have been in combat throughout history. Soviet female snipers in World War II, Vietnamese women in the tunnels, Kurdish women fighting ISIS. The only people who think women can't fight are the ones who have never really watched them try." The afternoon brought combat training, but again, not what the SEALs expected. Instead of direct confrontation, they learned techniques that used an opponent's strength against them. Reeves, who weighed barely 130 pounds, repeatedly took down Reynolds using leverage and timing. "You're fighting like a man," she said after dropping him for the 5th time. "Using muscle against muscle. I'm fighting like someone who knows physics. Your strength becomes my weapon when you don't know how to control it." Week 3 of Project Valkyrie brought unexpected changes. The SEALs, humbled and exhausted, had stopped resisting and started learning. Reynolds found himself studying videos of Strike Team 7's operations late into the night, analyzing techniques he'd never considered. Torres was practicing flexibility exercises that looked more like yoga than traditional military training. Chen had started learning the art of presence modulation, becoming less threatening, more invisible. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental. Years of assumptions were being systematically dismantled and rebuilt. On a Wednesday morning that started with unusual quiet, Rebecca Stone arrived with the four generals again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind them walked someone Reynolds recognized immediately, Admiral Michael Bradford, the highest-ranking SEAL in history, a legend who'd written the book on special operations. "Ten Hut," Reynolds barked, and everyone snapped to attention. Admiral Bradford was 71 years old, weathered like driftwood, with eyes that had seen everything. He walked slowly down the line of SEALs, studying each one. "At ease," he said finally. Reynolds stepped forward. Reynolds stepped out, nervous. Bradford was his hero, the man whose biography he'd read a dozen times. "Tell me, son, what have you learned in the past 3 weeks?" Reynolds thought carefully. "Sir, I've learned that I've been operating with a limited perspective. That strength comes in different forms. That the way we've always done things isn't necessarily the best way." Bradford nodded slowly. "Anything else?" "Yes, sir. I've learned that I owe apologies to people I can't apologize to because they're dead." The Admiral's expression softened slightly. "General Stone, show him." Rebecca pulled out a tablet, swiped to a video. It was a news report from 3 days ago. Following revelations about discrimination in Special Forces training, the families of 3 deceased service members have established the Chen Gonzalez Brooks Foundation for Military Equality. The foundation will provide support for female service members pursuing special operations careers. The video showed the families of the 3 women who had committed suicide. They weren't angry, they were determined. "Amy Chen's mother asked me to give you this," Rebecca said, handing Reynolds a letter. He read it aloud, his voice shaking. "Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, I don't forgive you for failing my daughter. That's not mine to give. But I challenge you to ensure no other mother loses a daughter to prejudice. Amy died believing she wasn't good enough. Make sure no one else does. Mrs. Helen Chen." Reynolds' hands trembled as he folded the letter. Admiral Bradford spoke again. "I'm here because I owe General Stone an apology. 40 years ago, when she was Kevin Stone in my Bud S class, I knew something was different about that candidate. When the truth came out, I was one of the voices calling for court-martial. I was wrong." He turned to Rebecca. "You became everything I said you couldn't be. You exceeded every standard I set. And you did it while fighting not just the enemy but your own side." Rebecca nodded acknowledgement but said nothing. "Which brings me to why we're all here," Bradford continued. "The President has signed an executive order. Project Valkyrie is now official. Integrated Special Operations teams will be formed across all branches. And Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, you and your team have a choice." Reynolds looked up. "Sir, you can return to your regular duties, your records cleared of this incident. Or you can become the first male team to fully integrate with Strike Team 7. You'd be pioneers, testing whether everything General Stone believes about integrated operations is true." General Anderson added, "This isn't charity, Reynolds. Strike Team 7 has a mission coming up. High-value target extraction in hostile territory. They need operators with your traditional skills to complement their unconventional ones. The question is whether you can work as equals." Reynolds looked at his team. He saw Thompson nod slightly. Torres was already stepping forward. Chen's expression was determined. "Sir, we'd be honored to integrate with Strike Team 7. Kumar spoke up. "Don't answer so quickly. This means accepting my command for the mission. A female sergeant leading Navy SEALs. Can your ego handle that?" Reynolds thought about the past 3 weeks, about everything he'd learned. Sergeant Kumar, 3 weeks ago, my ego couldn't have handled it. Today, I'd be privileged to follow your lead. Prove it, Kumar said. The mission brief is in 10 minutes. You'll sit, you'll listen, and you'll contribute only when asked. This is our operation, your support. The SEALs nodded. As they walked toward the briefing room, Rebecca fell into step beside Reynolds. You know, she said quietly, real courage isn't charging into battle. It's admitting you were wrong and changing course. You're showing that courage now. General Stone, those 3 women who died, will never come back, Rebecca finished. But their deaths don't have to be meaningless. Every female operator who succeeds from now on validates their sacrifice. The briefing room was unlike any Reynolds had experienced. Instead of the testosterone-fueled, aggressive planning he was used to, Strike Team 7's approach was methodical, creative, and collaborative. They discussed 17 different infiltration routes, analyzed cultural considerations that male teams often ignored, and developed contingencies that relied on brains over brawn. The target is here, Kumar pointed to a compound in Yemen. Traditional assault would require a full platoon and air support. We're going to do it with 8 operators, 4 men, 4 women. She outlined the plan. The women would infiltrate first, using their ability to blend into the civilian population. The men would provide overwatch and heavy support if needed. It was a perfect fusion of different capabilities. Questions? Kumar asked. Tors raised his hand. The extraction route through the market, won't we stand out? Sergeant Patel smiled. You will. That's why you'll be in traditional clothing, playing the role of foreign workers. Meanwhile, we'll be invisible because no one looks twice at women shopping in a market. It was brilliant, using societal blind spots as tactical advantages. 3 days later, the mission launched. Reynolds found himself in overwatch position, providing cover for Kumar's infiltration team. Through his scope, he watched her move through the compound like smoke, invisible to guards who dismissed her as a cleaner. When she gave the signal, his team moved. The extraction was flawless. The target captured without a single shot fired, exfiltrated through routes that conventional thinking would never have considered. Back at base, as they debriefed, Admiral Bradford was waiting. Outstanding work, he said. This is the future of special operations, integrated teams using diverse strengths. He looked at Reynolds. You've come a long way from laughing at someone's rank, son. Reynolds nodded. Yes, sir. General Stone taught me that warriors come in all forms. I just had to open my eyes to see it. 2 months later, at a ceremony at the Pentagon, Reynolds stood at attention as Rebecca Stone was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, publicly this time. The citation read, "For transforming special operations through innovative integration strategies and proving that diversity is not just a social goal but a tactical advantage." After the ceremony, Reynolds approached her. "General Stone, I have something for you." He handed her a photo. It was his integrated team after their 5th successful mission. 4 men, 4 women standing as equals.